So, not long ago, I jokingly tweeted that The Room was a complex allegory about life's incomprehensible absurdity and that our boy Tommy Wiseau was a genius performance artist. Then I got several messages from people that took me seriously, and while I think that my other theory that he's the chief overlord of the lizard people might not hold up to the same scrutiny, it got me thinking maybe I should treat this film with the same legitimacy as any other work of art. And of course, being the hyper-pretentious overthinking dickhead that I am, who better to make sense of this platinum-polished turd than me? I have never used this word before, but The Room is just spellbinding. It is transcendent how something so vapid and seemingly alien can be so oddly engaging, and I read a lot of Twitter. Now, of course, after Greg Sestero's book, The Disaster Artist, suddenly everybody's an expert on the film, but instead of going down the mysterious rabbit hole of Tommy's delusions of grandeur that became the underdog story that proved that nothing was impossible, to best understand what makes this existential miracle so intoxicating, I want to attempt some brain science.
You drive me crazy!
You have to treat the room like a schema or diagram. The theory goes that we process units of information to form an understanding of a particular thing or interaction. So, for example, you know what a cow is based on components of look, sound, and movement that distinguishes it from a horse that has its own unique components, as does an elephant, and so on. The same goes for a handshake or a high five or a fist bump. We know what it is, and thus we know how to appropriately respond to it. Now, the theory states that if someone was to greet you by, say, leaning their foot into your face, it disrupts the schema of your interaction because you naturally anticipate how greeting someone should and ought to function, and thus it confuses your ability to process things normally. The Room is that foot to the face.
I did not hit her. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
Given the film is set in the real world by introducing a real San Francisco setting and elements like cancer, drugs, everyday shenanigans, and human behavior in general, only to act in a way we aren't familiar with completely disrupts our ability to process and understand something we should be entirely accustomed to.
Yeah, you can say that again.
There is not one single element in the film that correlates with another to create the schema necessary to establish the rules of the world and facilitate our suspension of disbelief.
You like it?
Yeah.
Good.
You look great. You look a baby face, huh?
Put it this way, we know cars don't fly, but it works in conjunction with every other component in this film to create the schematic of how this world functions, and thus we buy into it. Yet, for some reason, we have a difficult time trying to take this simple reality seriously. The best way I can describe it is the uncanny valley of live-action cinema. The weirdness and subsequent humorous fascination we have with it is defined by how it conflicts with all basic human logic and interactions we commonly identify with, making everything we perceive abnormal and amoral, resulting in a psychologically and emotionally jarring experience.
Everything goes wrong at once. Nobody wants to help me, and I'm dying.
You're not dying, Mom.
I got the results of the test back. I definitely have breast cancer.
Sorry, you what, love? Sestero perfectly described the film as a supremely dislocating experience, one gigantic plot hole. Not just a plot hole in storytelling or filmmaking, but a plot hole in human comprehension. What I think distinguishes The Room from comparably bad movies like Birdemic and Troll 2 is how the storytelling feels objectively and obtrusely disconnected from humanity, and is only further compounded by distinct inorganic mood swings that change scenes from serious to comical without reason. Like, look at this for example. We have the unemotive acting coupled with the severity of Mark's story that contrasts with Johnny's emotionally contradictory response, leaving us feeling totally alienated because that's not how humans interact.
I used to know a girl. She had a dozen guys. One of them found out about it, beat her up so bad she ended up in a hospital on Guerrero Street.
What a story, Mark.
You see, that's what makes Andy Kaufman so famous and Tom Green's Freddy Got Fingered so infamous. Kaufman's humor derives from making you feel uncomfortable through an awkward, unorthodox performance style you're unfamiliar with, whereas Green's film is filled with random, disconnected bits that are so bizarre and creatively displaced that it practically becomes just as appropriate as laughing at a funeral.
Daddy, would you like some sausage? Daddy, would you like some sausages?
There was a brilliant quote given to me by an improv artist where, if you aim for funny and it's shit, but if you aim for brilliance and it's shit, it's funny. It perfectly describes The Room and a lot of other bad movies for that matter. Ultimately, for its story to work, you have to be able to take the hard-hitting melodrama seriously, but it's counteracted by its technical, crappiness, shall we say.
What a story, Mark.
As the auteur piece of cinema was so intended, at face value, The Room has an extremely cynical perspective on life. After all, this is a film with the passion of Tennessee Williams, a playwright famous for taboo subject matters like sexuality, abuse, addiction, and our fragile inner torment. Williams' work was considered harrowing and complex, but also deeply sensitive and personal because he drew exclusively from real-life experiences. The Room is supposed to be like this too. It's not. It likes to literally tell you it is.
He's very sensitive.
But I take issue with the fact that so much of it is painfully derivative of ideas lifted directly from A Streetcar Named Desire.
Hey, Stella! You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
The story presents Johnny as a kind, sensitive, everyday hero who is betrayed by the entire world, feels alienated at work, has a grotesquely unfaithful future wife who bangs his best friend, is trying to support and nurture a young, parentless neighbor who looks up to him and for whatever reason has a sexually sinister side to him, and then you have people who just randomly walk into his house, leave their DNA, and leave.
How many people come in and out of this apartment every day? This is worse than Grand Central Station.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, sister. You know, when you think about it, it's a 1950s film trying to guess how people in the 21st century would interact by normalizing unfaithfulness and betrayal the same way that it seems to shrug off domestic violence. Well, normalize is a very strong word. Let's try bastardize.
All men are assholes. Men and women use and abuse each other all the time. There's nothing wrong with it. Marriage has nothing to do with love.
I'm speechless. I have never been in so much awe of how negative a film can be in its portrayal of romance. At the same time, for as aesthetically and morally broken as it is, it's somehow strangely endearing. When I first saw The Room, I thought it was a gothic vampire flick, directed by a guy who had watched way too many daytime soap operas and pornography. But I must admit, there is a tangible passion and authenticity that shines through despite fundamentally misunderstanding human nature. The bad quality we can understand, but the mystique, the allure, whatever you want to call it, will always be how it doesn't look or act human, but yet oddly feels so human. Follow me on Twitter, and if you enjoy the show and you want to support it, go check out my Patreon. Until next week, stay safe, and I'll see y'all next week. I gotta go outside again. I hope I get my silver play button for this.